Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to look at Jesus Comics number 3 by Foolbert Sturgeon, which is the pen name of Frank Stack. This title, this is the first issue that's actually just called Jesus Comics, even though it's number 3. The first issue was called The New Adventures of Jesus. The second issue was called Jesus Joins the Armed Forces, something like that, I believe. And this is the third issue, which is just simply called Jesus Comics. So if you're a little confused, if you're trying to look up the other issues of this, it's a little confusing. This was published by Ripoff Press in 1972, and this is pretty much the theme of this issue is that Jesus joins the academic community. At this point, Frank Stack had become a part of the academic community. So there's some really good satire in here where he knows what he's talking about. So there's some good stuff. Of course, he does the cover here. This is very odd, the coloring on this cover. It almost looks like maybe it's a misprint or some bong water got spilled on this cover back in the 70s before I bought it. It just looks very weird, this bizarre effect of the colors and how sound effect is like fading out into it. So we start off with this one pager, another episode of the second coming of Christ. And we see Jesus and he's come back and he realizes things have changed and he's got to maybe change his methodology. And he also realizes he can't just bum around like he used to, just walking around talking to people. In this new world, he's got to get a job. So he sent out a bunch of resumes, and he doesn't have any friends in the Carpenters Union anymore. So he gets a job at a college, at a university named Sump College in Indiana. He's going to be a guest lecturer. So now we start off with Jesus joins the academic community. So we see this college, and I know you guys have heard me say this before, but I've always disliked Frank Stack's artwork because I saw his 80s stuff, his late 80s stuff in Rip-Off Comics. I thought the guy was terrible. And then I discovered these old undergrounds, and I definitely like his art now. His art back then was really good. Amazing illustration. Just good stuff. So Jesus is checking things out. And he's like, oh, this looks like a pretty cush gig. So he's waiting for the dean all day to talk to the dean, Dean Scotus. Basically, he's out of town, or he just doesn't want to see anyone. So he has to see the assistant, Smiley Phibius. And he basically lays down what they expect from him, which is basically to, if you have any iconoclastic thoughts, keep them to yourself. You got to restructure your ethical code to the realities of the modern world. So it just, even though they're very liberal, and he goes to great pains to convey to Jesus that, oh, we want you to do your own thing, but not necessarily. There are definitely they want to confine his thought if it gets too radical or weird. So Jesus is like, well, fine. And he's walking around campus, and he meets this young co-ed. He actually tries to bum $1 off of her because he's got no food. She says, come over to my house. I'll make you a sandwich. And even though she's all like, oh yeah, when I was a little girl, you used to be number 1 on my list of all-time greats I'd love to talk to. But I've outgrown that shit now. But I'll still make you a sandwich. And then she's thinking to herself, a chance to lay Jesus Christ? Wow, far out. We never find out what happens with this interlude. Next, we have a comic strip called Craddock's Crusade. Words by Lewin Atkins. Pictures by Gilbert Shelton. And this is just another one of those Gilbert Shelton strips where it's just a bunch of silly verse, silly poetry. And he just, there's so many Gilbert Shelton strips where he does this. I'll give you like an example. Shrake and Shrank and Crank and Craddock lived together in a paddock, eating hash and smoking haddock till the cows came home. Angry Anguses and Jerseys chased the perverts out with purses to the courthouse, which of course is in the Astrodome. So it's just a very silly little story. They get sent to jail, but Craddock escapes. And at the end, he's this wild radical who's graffitiing "Let Your Chickens Go." Very strange stuff, but really just fun cartooning. I love Gilbert Shelton when he's like this. Just really tight. I don't know who Lewin Atkins is. I should have looked it up. But speaking of which, we have a Will Hatcher adventure, written and drawn by Will Hatcher. And this guy, I did look up and I could not find anything about him. But damn it, this is fascinating. I never heard of this guy. Look at the level of illustration here. This is like New York Times book review. Those little drawings of the authors. This is an amazing comic. So, Will Hatcher's this dude, and he picks up a copy of Robert Crumb's Despair. We see him reading it, the great underground comic. And on the back cover of Despair, there's a thing, like a fake ad that's like, anyone can draw cartoons. And this really inspires Will. And he says, he starts drawing his own comic. He says, hot damn, I think I'm feeling better already. Because this guy's kind of bitter. He's got all these quote-unquote enemies, you know. God, I'm lingering on this art. This guy's really good. But then he totally changes the style because this is the character Will Hatcher within the comic. This is how he draws. And, you know, supposedly he's a novice. He's a pretty damn good novice, if he is. So we see this, like, pompous ass going on about yada, yada, yada. And we see Will Hatcher saying, first, I catch one of them with his mouth full of shit. The guy continues to spew bullshit. And then I rip his skin off. This is just amazing. I love this art. And of course, this guy's screaming and jumping around in pain. And Will Hatcher just talks about how he's reveling in sadistically torturing this guy. He wrangles him with his own skin. And then he sticks a big firework in his butthole. The guy continues to pontificate. And so, of course, the guy takes off like a rocket, crashes into this tree. Man, look how just crazy abstract this is. It looks like those Northwest Native Americans, their totems, you know, their weird art. And so this dog shows up and starts just ripping this skinless guy to shreds. Of course, Will Hatcher's loving it. This is incredible stuff. He rips out his tongue. Looks like he's playing hacky sack with it. Bops it right into the dog's mouth. He eats it. Then he takes the skin, stretches it in between two trees, and launches this poor guy. He may have been full of bullshit, but nobody deserves this treatment. And he swings him into the sky. And then he looks at us and says, well, I guess that pretty well handles that. Does it, Will Hatcher? Wait till tomorrow. Man, and then he goes back to his highly illustrative style. Amazing stuff. Strangely enough, when I did look this up, I did find out that the same comic apparently appeared in Feel Good Funnies, which was another Frank Stack comic, which came out like a month after this. So it's kind of weird that he would reprint the stories so soon in a different publication. Next, we have Jesus Learns a Thing or Two. So Jesus is sleeping on the campus. A policeman comes up, basically, saying, "Hey, you can't do that here, you vagrant hippie." He's like, "Why not? I'm just taking a nap." It's like, "Well, you're a vagrant. You got no job." He's like, "No, I do. I'm in the faculty at the campus." But he doesn't have his ID. So the cop's saying, "Well, you got to prove it to me." And so Jesus can't. And so Jesus ends up in jail with this murdering bank robber. So Jesus is implying to the guard, he's not coming out and saying it that I'm the Son of God, but he's talking about it like, "Hey, there's a top authority." No, I'm not talking about the president. Someone higher. Let me talk to him, or he can help me. So he goes to talk to the warden, or I don't know, the judge, some authority figure. And he kind of just gives him a lecture about like, well, technically it's not illegal, but it goes along with antisocial behavior, people who sleep in a park. This is friendly advice. Make some compromises and get involved in some productive activity before it's too late. So he's freed from jail. And so Jesus says, maybe he's right. Maybe Judge Scrotum was right. Maybe I should engage in some productive activity. And right then he gets an invitation to a faculty party. So he figures he's going to go. He should do something. And here we see, now this is almost like a mini epic in satire. This like skewers academia so much. It's almost like that David Lodge guy. I had to read him in college, who's made all these books about, making fun of academia from within. He was in academia, and his books are just like, oh man, professors are so full of shit, and the whole system is full of shit. And that's what this story is like. And it's really well done, and very deft satire going on here. And of course, really nice illustration. So Jesus comes to the party, and all these, a lot of them are windbags and pretentious fools. And I just love the way this story's so, I hate to use the word again, deftly. It's very deft how it progresses. The party starts off, no one's that drunk, so everyone's talking about whatever typical bullshit. And he has all these little balloons in the background. So we get a sense of what everyone's talking about. The kind of cliche stuff and whatever was topical at the time. People talking about Nabokov's latest book. Just all this stuff. So it's very much almost like you feel like you're at a party where you hear all these snatches of dialogue behind the main conversations. So that's pretty much all this is, this comic. And there's a lot of talk of someone named Jim Gibbon. It seems like all the women are like, where's Jim Gibbon? Oh, I wish he was here. When is he going to show up? And these guys are like, who cares? I'm going to have to pop him if he acts like he did last time. I guess he's the kind of guy who will hit on your girlfriend and then insult you. But everyone will think like, hey, he's the life of the party. So we hear all this backstabbing and all these different conversations. Right at the party, guys are telling professors that, hey, sorry, you're not making tenure. In fact, you're fired. And these, devastating these guys. The art's pretty loose here, but it works perfectly because this is all about the dialogue. It's almost like a great play. And so as every page progresses, things are getting a little wilder. People are loosening up. Here's the scene where this guy gets fired, basically, at a party, and his wife is freaking out on the guy who fired him, being like, "You can't fire my husband." And then they admit to her, it's like, "Well, frankly, it's because of you. We don't like you. You don't fit in." It almost looks like Harvey Kurtzman here. And its looseness. So that's all this comic is. It's like it is like some great play or like a Robert Altman movie. All these snatches of dialogue floating in and out. And everyone's getting a little more high, a little more drunk. And Jesus is kind of confounded in this atmosphere. He's just meeting these people. He's like, holy shit. And finally, Jim Gibbon shows up. I guess he was at a bar, but ran out of money, so he figures, oh, I'll go to the party, get free booze. He brings all these kind of low lifes with him. This one guy, Jeff Despade, that's his name. He kind of looks like Dr. Feelgood. I think maybe it is Dr. Feelgood. This one woman is totally fawning over Jim, even though he's just insulting her. So they bring all kinds of things are talked about here, like racial stuff. There's a black professor and these friends of Jim, these black guys, are giving him shit. It's like, you're not a real Spade. Whatever. You've never been in the ghetto. This comic, basically, with all these word balloons, they touch on almost every aspect of society. People are talking about, economic systems. They're talking about philosophy. They're talking about film. So things are getting really wild. Things are getting crazier and crazier, especially because Jim's there now and his crazy friends. So it gets to the point where Jim convinces this woman who's obviously adores him. He says, hey, if you want to prove you're cool, you'll have sex with my friend Carlos over here. Carlos is one of the guys that came from the bar. She takes off her clothes right in front of everyone, and Carlos just starts having sex with her in front of everyone at the party. Her husband shows up, and he's more mad that she's just embarrassing him than that she's fucking another man. She's like, can't you just go to a bedroom or something? There's people watching. And then Jim is trying to egg him on. He's like, you're chicken shit. You should do something. And so then Jim starts fucking with this guy. And this guy starts kicking Jim's ass. There's some really great art here. I can't believe I used to not like Frank Stack. Well, his Lady D stuff is pretty terrible. So as you can see, things are just getting nuts. This party's turning into a bacchanal. Everyone's just wasted. Fights are breaking out, orgies. People are fucking in every spare corner of the house. And then Jim's friends just start stealing stuff. They're just like, okay, let's get out of here. They're grabbing TVs. They're grabbing everyone's coats. The pot comes out. People are just high and drunk. Half the women are just walking around naked now. I know this is probably like, 10 to 12 pages, but it feels really long in a good way. It just keeps going and going, and you're like, oh my God, how far is this party gonna go? By the end of the night, it's like all the furniture is gone. The friends of Jim, and it is pretty racist. It seems like it's all these black guys that he brought. They're all just like, ooh, how much can we steal from these honkies? But yeah, I have nothing to say about that except it's just kind of bad. But the rest of the comic is just amazing satire. And then finally, there's an explosion in the house. Somebody is trying to light the oven and fucks up and blows up the house. And Jesus just like walks away. It's dawn. And he's like, I got a class in 20 minutes. See you later. And these two guys are like, God, what a bore. I thought he'd never leave. Even though the house is on fire. And who knows how many people are dying in there. It's a crazy story. Really amazing. Like, this is just the kind of stuff where if you think, God, if the underground comics kept going in the 70s, I mean, they would have gotten to a point where they got all the fecophilia and scatology and perversion out of their system. They would have just been doing like mature works, like alternative comics before they were alternative comics, like Love and Rockets, stuff like that. Maybe in like, if undergrounds kept going in the mid 70s, there would have been all these like mature comics that, adults could read without just giant veiny cocks and, incredible gnarly violence. So next we see the daily grind. Jesus is teaching his class. All the students seem to dislike him. They're all, basically questioning that if he's the Son of God, if he's Jesus. And, of course, a lot of them are commenting on how bad he smells. Because, Jesus doesn't know about deodorant and stuff. God, just look at this great panel here. All the students milling out of class, talking about how shitty Jesus is. Jesus doesn't seem to get it. He's just like, the joy of tendering eager young minds. And he looks at his inbox, and some of the students leave some nasty notes. So I think this is an assistant, or his, what do you call these guys? He's in charge of almost like the team leader at the college. He says, step into my office. And he basically says, we've been getting a lot of complaints about you. And first off, they tell me you have BO. And he raises his arms like, oh, man. And they're also, he doesn't like his halo. He says, come on, that's a bit showy, isn't it? So Jesus gets this kind of complex. He's like, oh, man, I guess I am just kind of a stinky guy in shitty clothes. Well, I've got all these offers for credit cards now. I'm going to take advantage. So he goes out in the town. He gets deodorant first, but then he gets a whole new suit. He, buys a car. And then he keeps thinking about what he's going to keep by. He's like, yeah, my life's going to be totally different now. I'm sorry, he doesn't buy a car. He fantasizes about it. He's like, I'm going to learn to play golf, get some life and hospital insurance, maybe even get married. I'm going to dress in the latest fashion. Everyone's complimenting him in his fantasy. I might even shave. I'll become a respectable member of the community. It'll be tough at first because I'll have all his credit card debt. And then we see 10 years pass. And he's just totally ensconced in the cushy academic life, but he's not really doing anything. He's having beers with his students. He's like the cool, groovy teacher. And then he says, and finally, maybe I'll even get to be, dare I hope, department chairman, maybe even dean. And we see him firing some underling. And when he sees this image, Jesus throws everything he just bought into the garbage. And he sticks out his thumb to get the hell out of this town and leave his job because he doesn't want to be in academia anymore. He realizes where it's heading. Really great, like just single issue, even though it's all these different stories, but it does tell one big kind of story about Jesus entering academia and then finally leaving it in disgust. But yeah, this is the only issue of Jesus I have, and I really want those other ones now, because definitely the one about him joining the army, that seems like really interesting. We've seen this before. Here's that great Gilbert Shelton ad for Ripoff Comics, which is almost like getting a nice little cartoon. And then we have a back cover with Jesus, with some of these odd colors again. And once again, the kind of racist portrayal of black guys as just being lazy and shiftless. And he kind of repeats a joke that's inside the comic. He says, if Jesus was to return today, he'd be a black man. Remember, Dad, if you ever try coming back again. It's pretty funny. But also, yeah, it's a comic of its time. And even the hippies weren't immune to that shit. In fact, they were just as bad as everyone, I think, when it came to that. So, there you go. Jesus Comics number 3 by Foolbert Sturgeon, a.k.a. Frank Stack. Hope you guys like looking at this. I thought this comic was kind of a little bit of a revelation, because I've never read this much Frank Stack at once. You know, I have all these little short stories by him, and found this really enjoyable. The writing was really spot on, and also this Will Hatcher guy. And strangely enough, he even gets this like cover credit, the debut of Will Hatcher, and yet I've never heard of this guy again. So he had this fanfare, and he seems to deserve it. I mean, I'm surprised that people aren't talking about him or like, hey, whatever happened to Will Hatcher? Because that comic's pretty amazing. So, but once again, I'm rambling on. So, Jesus Comics number 3. Hope you guys liked today's video, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.